first Tuesday of January, 12 noon. That means, according to the United States Constitution, Congress is in session, as you just saw. The Republicans wielding the gavel in both houses of Congress. There you see the new senators being sworn in. The Republicans who will be wielding the gavel in both houses of Congress for the final 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency. And the laundry list of points where they differ is long.
Barack Obama returned from vacation this week knowing all has changed up on the Hill. As he gears up for his State of the Union address on January the 20th, he'll face a Republican-run Congress that convenes for the first time on Tuesday. And this is the man the president will have to learn to deal with. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell.
The problem is the president continues to send signals that he has no intention of moving toward the middle.
With both men trying to position their parties for 2016 presidential elections, they'll need to find a way to work together if they want to overcome governmental gridlock. But Republican senators and congressional members still seem set on chipping away at Obama's signature health care law, his recent executive actions on immigration and environmental regulations. Republicans also seem intent on trying to push through long-stalled and much-criticised legislation for the Keystone XL oil pipeline from Canada to Texas, although the president retains a veto. Despite the looming clashes, though, Republican leaders and the White House have indicated there is potential for cooperation, notably in areas like tax reform, infrastructure spending and trade deals.
Well, joining us now, Josh Kraushaar, politics editor at the National Journal. Happy New Year to you, Josh, and thanks for joining us again here on France 24. First of all, when you woke up this morning, did you say to yourself, well, I'm headed for 2 years of vitriol and brinkmanship, or do you think that something's going to get done over the next 2 years?
You know, it's been sort of a festive first day of the new Congress. There's always sort of a really jovial atmosphere in Washington for that first day. The leadership, but the votes are going to be taking place later this afternoon. John Boehner has a mild challenge. The House Speaker has a mild challenge from his rightward flank, but he's expected to be easily confirmed. Pelosi, Reid, all the leaders on both parties are expected to be confirmed. But, you know, like your report suggested, there are a lot of gaps between the new Republican Congress and where the president is. And based on how the president acted in his final couple months of the 2014, it doesn't seem like he's preparing for a lot of areas of compromise for this Republican Congress. There have been executive actions on immigration, new regulations that the Republican Congress has been warning and fighting over. So the likelihood of any significant legislation passing through both the Congress and signed by the White House isn't looking particularly likely.
I looked back at history, Josh, and there have been cases, most notably with Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, where it seemed like nothing would get done in their final 2 years in office, and they did manage to find compromises.
The big question is, what does President Obama want his legacy to look like? Does he want his final 2 years to be seen as a president who moved to the middle, who decided to compromise on some core issues like the Keystone Pipeline? Does he veto that if it, as expected, passes through Congress in the first few weeks of this new session? The indications are that he's looking more to cement his legacy as a very liberal, activist president and not really cut deals that could, give him some accomplishments legislatively, but not give him the kind of activism that excites the Democratic base. So it really is it's in both parties' courts, but the president, I think one of the key votes to look at is when this Keystone Pipeline, which is a symbolic issue that has pretty widespread support in the United States, whether the president vetoes that if it comes to his desk, that'll set the tone for this upcoming Congress.
It'll set the tone. You mentioned there, Josh, there's going to be those leadership votes. John Boehner, he's been in the past as Speaker of the House, outflanked sometimes, or at least pandered perhaps to his Tea Party right. Does he have a freer hand, or is he hamstrung by the Tea Party again?
They're the same 15 or so House members that are going to be opposed to a lot of what Speaker Boehner does, a lot of the legislation that's designed to give Republicans a legislative plan for the upcoming couple of years. The advantage that John Boehner has, though, in this upcoming Congress is that he has a much larger majority. Republicans gained over a dozen House seats. They already had a pretty sizable majority. They have the biggest House majority since 1928 for Republicans. So this is a big. Boehner can afford to lose, 15, 25 members of the most conservative flank and still get legislation passed through the House. So he doesn't have to be held hostage. He really needed a lot of those members to get legislation passed through the House the last 2 years. That's not so much the case anymore. He'll still have nuisances from the conservative flank, but he should have a pretty solid working majority these next couple of years.
Does that mean that perhaps there'll be less of a bridge with the White House?
Well, there'll probably be a lot of cooperation, and McConnell and Boehner, we'll see how they work together and whether they're on the same page. That'll be an initial test for the Speaker. But, Boehner has had challenges in cutting deals with the White House in the past. I don't think that there are a whole lot of issues. Trade, perhaps, maybe tax reform, but it looks like the Republicans are going to be setting their own path. They're going to be trying to tackle the health care law. They're going to be dealing with energy issues. And the White House is not really close to where the Republicans are on a lot of those hot button issues. So there's not a whole lot of common ground where both the Congress and the White House will find ways to work.
All right, so you mentioned the environment and that Keystone Pipeline being one of the big bellwether issues. Another one, and it's interesting, Josh, that this first day of Congress is taking place the same day that the Mexican president is in Washington. The other issue is immigration. And on that front, we've seen an executive order signed by the U.S. president since the November election to allow illegal aliens to stay for good in the United States. Can there be any kind of compromise between Republicans and Democrats on that?
It seems more likely that you'll see two separate tracks on immigration. When it comes to the Republican Congress, the question is, do they even tackle the issue at all, or do they pass their own legislation that's more conservative than what the president would sign? One of the ideas that's been talked about by Republican leaders in the House and Senate is passing an immigration bill that would deal with high-tech workers, workers from overseas that might have trouble getting visas to come to the country, but would immediately be able to work in white-collar labor, and also dealing with border securities, pairing high-end labor along with a border security bill. The president is unlikely to sign legislation that doesn't deal with the guest workers, deal with the illegal immigrants that are already in the country, and his executive order already, temporarily at least, deals with that. So he feels like he has the upper hand on the issue. But the big question is, will Republicans touch immigration at all, since it's such a polarizing issue in their conference? And if they do, I would expect it to focus on areas where there's more unification, where the party is more united, like on the border security end of things.
All right, so there could be agreement on that. You mentioned how Obama perhaps leaning towards sealing for himself an activist legacy. Were you surprised, Josh, when you saw him sign all these executive orders at the end of the year? What? Climate change with China, immigration, a normalization of ties with Cuba?
The White House clearly believes that the best political play for the president is to get things done, even if it poisons relationships with Republican leaders before the new Senate, the new Republican-controlled Senate, is sworn in. Mitch McConnell, after the Republicans took control of the Senate, outlined some areas where there could be compromise, but said when it came to immigration reform, that issuing an executive order would be akin to flying a red flag in front of the party and really poisoning the relationship and making it tougher to get some more substantive issues to get done. It seems like with that behind us, there's not any more glimmers of light, but indicating a more productive relationship between the two sides. And I think the White House, like I said earlier, has calculated that doing things by executive orders, trying to get as much done unilaterally, is the way to go to preserve the president's legacy, not so much working with the Republicans in Congress.
All right, not so much working with the Republicans in Congress. Josh, we talk about gridlock perennially in Washington, but it sounds like it's really worse than ever.
It is, and the parties are more polarized than they've ever been. I mean, one of the big factors that's been going on for several decades, but really has accelerated over the past few elections, is that the Republicans are now the conservative party. It's extremely hard to find many moderates left within the GOP, and especially these last two elections, the Democrats have become the liberal party. So there's not a whole lot of members representing the center in the country, and that because you don't have those internal voices within the parties cautioning moderation, you're seeing both parties on the bases and leaving a big vacuum in the middle. Doesn't allow a lot of room for cutting deals, making compromises. And it suggests that unless the economy grows or unless there's a really significant external event, whether it's the White House seeking a compromise for the sake of compromise, or whether it's economic growth, perhaps making public dissatisfaction with Congress less intense, it's likely that we'll see gridlock for another 2 years until we have a new president and perhaps a new clean slate in Washington.
How do you explain this polarization?
It's, I mean, again, it's a long time coming. You have parties becoming more ideologically homogenous, both Republicans and Democrats, and you have a president who's a very, if you look at what he said and how he's campaigned, he's focused on the base of his party, and that's how he won his re-election bid in 2012, more than gearing toward the center of the country. So his political constituency is more on the base, and the Republicans' constituency and how they get elected and how they get renominated are more with the people who show up and the activists that are very, very conservative. So the political incentives on both sides are to the bases. The only the one silver lining is that with a presidential election coming up, perhaps Republicans certainly know that they need to improve their image in the run-up to the 2016 election. Democrats, Hillary Clinton needs to see President Obama's approval ratings get better, get closer to 50% if she wants to have a really good chance to win that election. So there are a lot of that's the one saving grace, that with a presidential election in 2 years, both parties might want to help their party's nominees by presenting a better image and a better face forward to the country.
All right, first day of the new Congress, perhaps also in a way the first day of the 2016 campaign. Josh Kraushaar, I want to thank you for joining us there from Washington. Josh Kraushaar of the National Journal.